Well, I guess we will get kicking here. Welcome, everybody. All right, we're here. Welcome. This is the Open Poetry and Fiction Reading. And I am Tom Laughlin of the Creative Writing Program. I want to thank a few people for their help. Office of Student Engagement, Steve Rossi. I was hoping he was going to be here to say a quick hello, but I think he got tied up. He helped support us, as well as Matthew Olson of the Liberal Arts Division, Jill Keller, English Department. Beth Noel is the Director of Marketing, and they've been great help in all different ways for us, getting word out and getting some nice posters and things. So on site, we have, I think, 11 readers today, so we'll see. Want to dive right in. We're going to have some reading and help yourself to food, refreshments at any time. Don't worry about being too formal. If you like some things you hear, what could we do? We could clap, we could snap, we could do all sorts of stuff. Yeah. So I put together an order. I may shift things around depending on who shows and things, but why don't we get kicking and get started with Lexi Perry. Yeah.
You good?
Yep.
All right. Hello. This is a response poem, actually, to a couple of works. This is a response poem to the 1972 poem Clouds by Stephen Dobbins. And it's also a response to the George Harrison song Stuck Inside a Cloud. It's called Stuck Inside Stratus Clouds. The clouds descend most opaque and tangible, like heavy stones for the burdened mind, conjuring winds singing loudest to the silent souls in darkest hour. The texture of thick gray strokes with Mother Nature's volatile gusto. Are we really sad amongst the raining clouds? Or are the days we are stuck inside, searching for blue, but instead an endless blanket of gray, hunkering down like heavy weight of our eyes, a reason to marvel at the skies, sympathizing, an eternal response to internal sorrow through the taps of mist on white window pane. Too often rain subdues to springy pastels, but why lament dewdrops, cold to the touch, when I finally feel so sure there's a given answer, outside to inside. I find joy drifting in rainstorms, a high in the synapse of clouds leveling, sifting through murky fog. And when the storm subsides, my inner tempest recedes to low tide. Thank you.
Thanks for kicking us off today. And our next reader is Tariq.
Hey. You okay? All right. So I'm going to read two poems, and they're pretty much poems that come from a bigger story in my fiction piece and a little something I like to write about superheroes. So the first poem I'm going to read is based on a character that is chosen to become the superhero that the realms or Earth say needs. It's called The Hero Incarnate. Like Icarus, fly close to the sun so my wings can burn. In seconds my wings will return. As a phoenix who rises from its ashes and into the light, brings a new soul to my might. With the burning desire to help those in need, it is the key to your strength and speed. Know this kind of onyx, the hero Incarnate. And for the second one, it's based on a character that he will meet, but this one has been blessed, well not blessed, but cursed by wanting to know the future. It's called The Orphan's Tale. Seeking to know one's insight will lead you to such a fright. To see one's future, first you must be present to the past, which means now you come in dead last. Forever trapped in an orphan's tale, writing out one's zenith is now your jail. Now, child, live your life knowing, because you're forever the unknowing. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. And our next reader, Olivia Steen.
Hi everyone. So the poem I'm going to read today is about things that have been said to me as growing up in an interracial family. It's called Questions and Statements People Say to Mixed Girls. Can I touch your hair? Wow, you have really curly hair for a white girl. What are you? I'm a mixture of nations so beautiful some people have never heard of them before. I am backyard barbecues, hip-hop and country music, kachupa and seasoned chicken, hot dogs and salted chicken, that light tan with no burn afterwards, if we're categorizing stereotypes. Are you Spanish? Are you Jewish? Does your hair frizz after you brush it? I am too pale from my mother's side and too ethnic for my father's, too Americanized to appreciate Nanny's mother tongue before she died. How I long for the culture to embrace my roots. Have you always been that big? Big hips with the thigh dips, grown with a body that's a blessing on Instagram but unappreciated in person. You're like an inside-out Oreo. Watched Real Husbands of Hollywood before The Real Housewives. BET or CMT? I've always been an outsider, experienced the world on both sides. What are you? I'm me, still learning what that means.
Thanks, Olivia. Thank you. Our next reader is Neil Ferrer. Neil.
Hello, is that good? Am I too quiet? I'm still trying to find something to read for.
You speak normally.
Okay, so hi guys, the poem that I'm gonna read, still don't really know what I wanna read right now, but,
I like it.
yeah, I'm trying to,
This is a good poem.
yeah.
I like this one.
Jesus Christ, sorry. This is so embarrassing.
If you want, right, we can put.
No, I'm already up here. I might as well. Okay, so all right. Well, so here's a poem that so I suffer with my ADHD. Sometimes I can sort of shut down and I'm really silent for a really long period of time, and I just don't really say anything to anyone. And I want to say that that is being selectively mute or something like that. So I wrote a poem about it, and it is called The Great Silence. And just trigger warning for if you're sensitive to needle and thread across skin. So, okay. I am never truly quiet, for my mouth starts moving, the mouths of my mind open, a carnivorous chimera of wild whispers and malignant messages. That malevolent monster is a swarm that swirls in the continent of my consciousness, ravaging my words before they can ever leave my throat. I want you to think of this the next time I am quiet, so dreadfully quiet. I want to scream, but my mouth is sewn shut through a needle called normality and a thread named tainted temperance. And this next poem that I'm gonna read. So my grandmother used to have a cottage used to have a cottage in Cape Cod, and one of my favorite things about when we used to go to Cape Cod is that there were mourning doves that would never stop doing their call. And so whenever I hear mourning doves, I think of Cape Cod. So this is a poem that I wrote called Mourning Doves of Cape Cod. Every morning was the same. The birds would sing while everyone else would be asleep in that limbo of wanting to wake Nana, my father and brother up, but also wanting to just let them sleep. I wandered around that tiny, ugly on the outside but pretty on the inside cottage. I still find myself in that lovely limbo with nothing but a deck of cards to keep myself busy. Playing those cards with Nana on the coffee table with that wooden turtle that I would later spend 20 minutes dumpster diving trying to find. I am thrust back into those warming memories. When the mourning doves sing their song, they and that old house are what benevolently chained me to Cape Cod. Thank you.
Signing on the spot, that's bold. That's good, I like it. Thank you, Neil. And our next reader, Stephen, you ready?
Sure.
Stephen
Hey.
NC.
So I'm pretty tired. I just wrote 300 poems last month, so right now, sure. Both of them. Three real short ones here. I don't know if they're real short. They're short. So, poem number 275. Being old and knowing so with love. I, being my mind, my body, when it is only your body, it is so very quite a new thing, good. All the best of me, my muscles pull, taut, tight, taut over bones, under skin, our skin. It seems like our skin. It knows more than than I knew me. When I am alone, even with you sometimes, with my body, I am my mind alone. My body, when it is, not with you, only my body. It does seem smart. It is not smart, I think. It hangs around with bad people, around the house, or sits around and stares, around and back, out the window, until when you come, almost near. When I am alone, my body, my mind, it jumps up and says, how do you do? Praying, I think, that you are close. And it almost runs, and almost jumps, and almost comes, and swings, and sings to you, only for you, only for love. I am with you, so glad being in the every place, to be with you, my mind, my body. I am with you, so glad to be with you, to be alive, so very alive, mind, body, and soul with you. This is my advice to myself about writing this poem. Words should be made of solid things, the sun and moon, water and tree, things that can be seen, be known, be met, heard, smelled, tasted, and touched. These words should be a painting, or a sculpture, or a dance, or a piece of music. This poem should be that. This should do that. This poem should create a world, real and unreal, familiar and strange, a journey into the unknown, into the known, a gift, beauty, insight, understanding, or perhaps it should not be at all. And we'll finish with my little May poem. The impending nature of May between April showers. The day was gray, so very gray. The river too was gray. The sky was gray, so very gray, and gray was all the day. I walked along the riverside, sunless, wondering why. The gray was so endless, nothing else could I espy. The trees were bare, so very bare. The grass was very dead. The birds had flown so far away. The flowers had no red. And all the world seemed cold, so very cold and drear. And I was sad, so very sad, as I walked bereft of cheer. The spring would never come. No, not again. And the summer days that would be then, as gray and cold, so very cold, as this gray day has been. The world would never be as beautiful as green, nor as bright and beautiful, so beautiful as when the birds sang sweetly, and the oak tree branches bend, and the flowers bloomed, they all bloomed in every dell, and all the world was glad back then, glad and very well. I walked along the stream, despondent at the gray, until I saw a little flower gleam, at loss for what to say. In its beauty, every word I knew I ever forgot. With my sorrows, every loss, and everything I sought. Oh, joy there beside the river, I was so glad to see. Spring was coming, she was coming, and she would soon make all the world, the wondrous world is fair, as fair as days gone by. All the world, the wondrous world, joined as I waved the gray goodbye.
Stephen, some springness. Our next reader is Mackenzie Taylor. A couple.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. So, as most of you know, I write a lot of poems about societal issues, personal issues, just my way of understanding things. And in the past 3 years, I've written a lot about things with my mom, and this one specifically focuses on the guilt of getting out of that household when I was 17. It's called Remnants of Leaving a Mother Behind. I'm afraid I may never be who I could have been, because I am stuck 17, sucking down the blood from my own wrists, from my mother's claws ripped through, not out of cruelty, but desperation, for me to stay, just sleep it off. It'll be mended by the morning. But it wouldn't be. I couldn't be. I had to leave. But truth be told, I wanted to slam my skull off of that door frame, forget my own name, forget the cards dealt in this unfair game I never should have been playing. I wanted to keep my clothes in the drawer, like every other time before. I wanted to be a good daughter. A good daughter. Was I ever a good daughter? Was I ever good? Will I ever be good? If I can only ever see myself as a girl escaping, as a gaping door frame, as a child unsaved, how can I ever be good when I'm an echo of a sullen silhouetted woman, when the monster in the house I grew up in was never under my bed, but instead across the table, dragging his fork across the plate, or in my mother's bed snoring, turned away from her? How can I ever be good when I turned away from her? I may never become what I should have been, may remain who I was then, shredded and torn, unloved and awfully bloodied, not out of cruelty, but desperation.
Thank you, Mackenzie. Our next reader is Jared Watt. Jared?
Hello there.
Hello.
It's Star Wars Day. I had to. Nice, nice. Today I have a bit of a older fantasy piece of mine called The Cold Walk Back. I think I could read for about 5 minutes. It might take like 7, but we'll see how it goes.
Yep, great.
It was the. I'm gonna adjust the mic so I'm not charged. Is this okay? Thank you. It was the weight of it all that bothered her the most. Usually, the weight of the armor was always a strain on her, the gauntlets and broadsword especially, but she knew that the strain was worth it, if the armor did its job properly. She knew that every time she put that armor on, every time she ever had to use it, it would take a blow that could otherwise prove to be fatal. Yes, despite the strain, she knew that wearing it was well worth any physical cost, because it helped make sure that whenever a fight was over, she wouldn't be carried away as a body. No, wounded, bloody, tired, perhaps even dispirited, but she would be walking away, just like she was doing right now. But even the strongest armor has its weak points. There was always that occasional arrow, or two. One in her left shoulder, another in her right leg. The armor also offered no head protection whatsoever. The armor was also not great at keeping the cold out, a fact made evident by the terrible job it was doing in keeping out in the freezing blizzard she was currently standing in, leaving a deep, lasting chill in her bones. Despite all of its shortcomings, though, the armor had done a great job of protecting her heart. She could hear it, feel it, pulsing between her ears. With that, the armor had done its job. The remainder of the task fell to her. She surveyed the scene in front of her as best as she could. Large, fat flakes repeatedly impacted her face, but it was still relatively easy to make things out. A widespread red and white landscape all around her, covered with the scattered corpses of many warriors and goblins. Standing out against the rest of the carnage, however, were the corpses of 2 twin dragons, both as black as the night sky. She had no recollection of how exactly or who took them down. She had her eyes closed and swung blindly for most of that confrontation and just hoped that she would hit something. She had figured that, if the circumstances were different, she would feel some sense of relief that she had not died, a sense of pride. Right now, she was just too tired. She stopped walking for a moment, took it all in. They all came at her with the worst intentions in mind, and now they were all bloody, broken, and scarred. It took her a moment to realize that the only thing that she didn't have in common with the bodies was the fact that she was still alive. Further off in the distance loomed a large black tower, which stood out promptly against the never-ending backdrop of white and gray. Her final destination, her endgame. Should I pause?
Keep going. Up to you. What do you think? One more?
It's the 5-minute thing.
Keep going.
Okay.
Not that many.
With her one good arm, she reached across her body and drew her broadsword out of its sheath and stuck it into the ground next to her. She brought her arm, sore but not quite out of commission, up to her heart, not enough not to feel it beat through the armor, but to provide a little protection for the small package she carried with her, the package she was willing to wipe this whole army out to protect. She lifted her sword up and then struck it in the ground again, just a little bit ahead of her. Using it as a makeshift cane, she began to make her way towards the black tower. She had not taken 20 steps when a large, searing pain rushed through her leg, and when she turned her head to look down, she saw that it was in the grasp of a half-dead goblin, sprawled out with only a quick glance being needed to show that their legs were broken to the point of total uselessness. Through clenched teeth, painted red at the edges, in a tight, raspy voice, the goblin spoke. You think you've won? The goblin asked, turning their head and spitting in the red snow before continuing. Look at you. Not much better off than I am. You'll never make it. You'll never make it back to... With a rush of adrenaline, in one motion, she pulled the sword up from the snow, raised it over the goblin's head, and drove it, point down, into their skull, adding just a little more red to the already stained landscape. Pulling the sword back up and returning it to its original position by her side, she continued on towards the tower. She had no idea how long it took her to reach the tower. She hadn't bothered to keep time. The sun was completely blotted out by the snow clouds above. She couldn't even tell whether or not it had taken her moments or an eternity to get there. She was so tired. All the same, she suddenly found herself standing at the foot of the tower, obsidian black all over, save for its large wooden door, which was a deep brown. She let go of her sword and used her good arm to reach inside her armor to retrieve the large black key which she kept hung around her neck at all times, every time she went out. She pushed the key into the lock and turned it. Hearing the familiar click of the door unlocking, she couldn't help but let a small smirk cross her face. She pushed the door open, letting the howling winds and flying snowflakes follow her in. She looked up and saw the spiraling stone staircase descending further and further upward, illuminated only by the glow of the few torches on the walls. That was the bittersweet thing about living in a tower. No floor but the top floor, and it certainly wasn't fun climbing all those stairs in the heavy armor, especially not now. She couldn't complain, though. It had kept her alive. She just wished that she didn't feel so damn tired, that the armor didn't weigh as much as it did now. She let the sword fall to her side, to the ground. At this point, it would be just more dead weight. With that, she began her trek, her final trek, up the spiral stone staircase, her armor clanking with each slow movement. After a considerable amount of time, and again, that exact amount of time, was unknown. The task of climbing the stairs step by step in a continuous circle began to grow tedious. With nothing else to do, her mind began to focus on the injuries she had sustained. Her limbs began to stiffen and pulse with pain. "Not now, not now," she muttered. It was at this moment, with her mind wrapped up in other matters, that her body forgot where it was supposed to put her foot and missed a step. It slipped on the black stone, and everything slowed down as she started to fall backwards. She was saved from a long fall down only due to her reflexes. Her arm had quickly grabbed a hold of a crevice in the wall. She hung there for a moment, in the way one does after they save themselves from a potentially harmful or even fatal mishap, and took all the odds in before pulling herself back up and righting herself. She exhaled and tasted the sharp taste of blood in her mouth. As she lifted up her good leg to continue the climb, she also swore on the obsidian black stairs more than halfway to the tower's top that from that point on, no matter how great the pain or quiet the environment, she would not lose focus again until she had reached the end. She soon found herself at a point where the stairs stopped in front of a worn wooden door. The door that she knew led to the tower's main chamber that led to home. With her head down, her willpower almost totally depleted, overcome with pain, exhaustion, and cold, she used her good arm to push the door open. It should never have been unlocked to begin with, but she could only acknowledge that fact with a fleeting thought, and slowly trudged into her home. Before she could take 2 steps, she found that her foot had made contact with an object that should not have been in the doorway, and she soon found herself falling towards this cold, stone-hard ground. She let out a cry through gritted teeth as her body made contact with the floor, as a metal arrowhead was driven further into her shoulder from the force of the fall. Though throwing all thought of restraint to the wind, she allowed her cries to be louder, more pronounced, more vulgar, and in greater numbers. That is, she did until she realized that her declarations of pain were actually being canceled out by another series of shrieks. The long and loud cries of a displeased cat. Her cat. It was just her luck. After fighting off and defeating a near-endless horde of monsters, sustaining near-fatal battle injuries, and trudging across a corpse-covered field in a blizzard, and nearly breaking her neck by almost falling backwards on her own staircase because of said injuries, the thing that had finally knocked her to the ground was her own cat, who was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. "Fucking goose," she said to the feline, who had just walked over to face her. She refrained from using actual profanity around the cat called Goose most of the time. She loved her as though she were a child, which by all accounts she was. Goose meowed loudly in her face, as to remind her who the real victim in this situation was. As far as she was concerned, Goose's comment had sealed the narrative. That was it. She was physically unable to move anymore, unable to do anything but lie on the floor, feel the pain from her wounds, and curse herself for stopping when she had been so close to the end. Until she heard the sound of the doorknob rattling. She tilted her head up just in time to see the door open in front of her open. And what walked out of it was her reason for coming home. Her main reason for wearing the armor. "All right, you," the woman who emerged from the door began to say, stopping when her eyes swept to the floor. The woman's name was Catherine. She had a sharp, narrow face with deep green eyes and long, light brown hair that cascaded down her shoulders. She was dressed in a light green tunic with possibly more belts than were necessary. "Sil, what happened?" the woman in the doorway began to say, until she glanced down at her, lying on the ground, bloody, bruised, and wounded. Her eyes widened, and she put her hand to her mouth to hold back a silent scream. Then she got on her knees and slowly turned her over onto her back, cradling her in her lap.
Stop there.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. Great stuff. And I like the extra booming voice, didn't it? Add to the story. That's good. That's good. Good stuff. Thank you, Jared. Our next reader is Bridget.
Hello.
Hi.
This first poem I'm reading is called Something Dumb. Let's do something dumb. Throw ourselves into the light of the night, swing around the deep thoughts of darkness until we sink further into the murk that is our minds. Let's dance through the grime and mud, pick out the pits and tumors that pollute and poison. Keep safe the things that paint the bleak picture of innocence and the things that blur the reality of virgin hearts. We are free to tangle and let us be us. So let's do something dumb to stay real, stay human. The next poem I'm going to read is called Marionette, and slight trigger warning, there may be parts of body horror in the story. Marionette. I am nothing but a marionette, a puppet on broken strings, smashed porcelain upon my face, scratching out my beaded eyes, cutting open my silent lips, making a scream of pain that can't be heard, my limbs contorted and bent in places a body shouldn't. My left hand is missing, along with the ring. My heart is shattered and amputated in two. My stage is still set, but I won't perform on it anymore, because the master of my strings has already chosen someone new to use. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. Our next reader, Colby Scaplin. Colby.
Hello. For the one poem I'm reading, the little context, I use a quote from a certain politician and then I do my own shift on that quote. And trigger warning for a couple possibly graphic images. The first thing in any kind of, it's called pray for death. The first thing in any kind of tragedy is I pray. I pray for the victims. I pray for the families. I get really angry when people try to politicize it for their own personal agenda, especially when we don't even know the facts. The first thing I do in any kind of tragedy is speak to a nameless entity to which we have no solid evidence, for which it sits back and watches children be raped and punishes the rapist after the deed is done. I pray for victims. I pray for the families of my victims, because I leave my destiny in the hands of a God like a cuck, and I watch him fuck my children. But it's all part of his plan. So I sit back in my leather chair, smiling in my wool coat and linen pants. Thank you.
Thank you, Colby. Did Elle show up? No, I don't think so. Well, I will pitch in a couple poems to end things out, unless some other people find their way here who had signed up. I think I will, first poem, celebrate a poem that was published just a week and a half ago in Pensive, Journal of Spirituality and the Arts. I taught in prisons many years ago, and this a series of poems came out in the last year or so when one of my former students has been in the news and got me thinking about my experiences there. A couple pieces of info. One is CO is a correctional officer, and in prisons there is a 10-minute, ones I worked in anyway, 10-minute period each hour that is this movement time, and otherwise you need to be in a particular building. If you miss that time, you have to wait another hour. So that's movement. Poem is called Going to Prison Tuesday Nights. Released from my office on a tree-lined college campus, I cruise the colors of the city and further west down narrowing roads. In a thick band of woods, South Walpole's Winter Street forgets its name, passing over the Stop River to become Clark Street in Norfolk, where the trees drop away for barren fields like an emptied moat before high stone walls topped with razor wire. Inside, sealed behind 6 coats of light neutral, the cement block walls have stopped dreaming of sunlight. The twin fluorescent bands overhead, their only friend. The speckled gray linoleum floor won't talk, even when scuffed by the desk chairs brought in to impersonate a classroom, or when I arrive during 6 p.m. movement. But with the door closed and COs nowhere in sight, voices echo so eagerly that I strain to hear the student beside me. And one of my favorite poems of all times is 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird by William Carlos Williams, one of my favorite. And a few months ago, I wrote this response poem. His, if people aren't familiar, is a poem in 13 sections. They're numbered. And I tried to sort of echo some of his language and some historical. I went historical in a different direction, whatever. But it is in 13 sections, like his. I will just pause rather than read the numbers. And my poem is called 13 Ways of Looking at a Heart. Among 20 flooded streets, a woman stood on a porch roof. She was the heart of the neighborhood. I was of 3 minds, like 3 lost boys in the heart of a forest. Holding the camel pose, her heart opened again. It was a small moment in the yoga class. A man and a woman are one. A man and a woman and their hearts are one. I do not know which to prefer, the sound of your voice or the sound of our silence, the pulse of your heart or its echo within me. The setting sun spanked the ocean waves, shattering diamonds and sapphires. A shadow passed beneath, skulking slowly down the shoreline, tracing from the heart of the sea an enigmatic missive. O merciless men of Antietam, why do you perceive only darkness? Do you not see the hearts of their aging mothers are breaking beneath your bayonets? I strum airy instruments and whirl in the dance of the world, but I know it is the heart that sings and dances. Although her heart stopped, the rhythms still radiated outward across generations. At the sight of a blackened sky cracking with blinding light, even the hermits of Yellowstone became faint-hearted. He had climbed the peak and stood at the cliff's edge. Suddenly, light snow distracted his gaze with flakes dreaming downward to change his heart. The wind is filling the sails. The heart must be soaring. There was silence in the morning. He was going to speak, and she was going to speak. Their hearts listened for bird song from the cedar limbs. Thank you. And I want to maybe thank everybody who read and thank everyone's here, but maybe here for all the readers here. Elle, is that Elle over there? You want to read? We got another reader. Elle's going to read. All right. Awesome. Sorry. Elle Angerman. Here we go.
I had a 12:30 class.
Glad you're here.
Alright, doesn't have a title. I cut my thumb on your original sin. It speaks to me. Free. Let me be your rib. Let me be your hip. Let me be your spine. Walk me downstream. I'll bathe in the ocean with you. Pull me through you, so close I'm on your other side. Hold me so tight we are back to back. Oh God of alabaster, you're tripping, crumbling, turning to powder in my hands. I will hold you together, reform you from the sand at my feet. Your white stomach will be smooth again. But when I trail kisses up it, I come one with grains. Forget with me, beautiful boy.
Thank you. Wasn't sure if we were going to go for another.
That's all.
Well, thanks, everyone. Big round of applause for everybody today. Great to have the voices in the mix. So wonderful. And I just want to make sure everyone knows that we have another event coming up at 2, but we have pizza and salad coming in another maybe 20 minutes. And we have the kickoff for Dead River Review, our Middlesex Community College online literary magazine, with contributors who will be reading from reading selections that were in the journal or talking about their visual art. So hope that you can stick around or take a break or grab an ice cream and the free ice cream outside or any of our snacks, and pizza will be out soon. Also, tomorrow and Saturday is the Lawawa Poetry Festival, which is an amazing festival. I should pull up overhead. Hold on. Didn't go. It's a release party and our Dead River Review, but there's Lawawa, yes. They're on the Cred Writing at Middlesex website. There's information and a schedule, including some student readers, but there are 25 poets from all over the world reading in translation their work and translations into English, Russian and Spanish and Haitian Creole and Vietnamese and Romanian and what else is there? A million other languages, not a million, but quite a few. So really going to be exciting. It's Friday night, 5:30 to 8:30, and Saturday 9 to 5 on the Lowell campus in the Arts Building. So hope that you can make some or all of that. There's also 1 credit class for any students who are interested in earning credit for that, an IDS class. So at least a couple people are doing that. So yes?
So you can just come to it, you don't have to be in the course.
Absolutely. It's free. There's a free lunch on Saturday. You can come anytime. You could stay the whole time, whatever you want to do. Absolutely. Yeah, so good question. So you don't have to do a credit or any of that, so it should be good. And there's also, on that poster, there's also live streaming options if you can't make it in person. It'd be great to have you there, but there are live streaming options, and the link is live on the Cred Writing at Middlesex website. If you go to that flyer and click on that, you'd be able to get to that. So. Also, just in future, we're ending the semester with lots of great events. This semester, our Cred Writing at Middlesex website has recordings of readings that happened, our MCC Visiting Writer Series, archive lots of different readings, and also open student readings and other things. Look for things for the fall and future there on the calendar. There's also a link to Dead River Review, and there's information about the club, the Cred Writing Club, Mad Queens Club. So thinking about that for next fall for others sticking around. So anyway, glad you're here. Go have some snacks, talk to the poets and fiction writers, and stick around for more soon. Thanks again.